Hey everybody, this is Chuck Menzer. I hope you're doing well in these crazy times. I figured that I would try doing this audio cast through a website called Screencast-O-Matic, which I learned about this morning in our social studies department meeting, to give you a live voiced review for our progressives test on Friday. Um, I will be working on some video lessons for next week through this same platform, and you may actually have to look at me at some point. So I'll apologize for that in advance, but today it is just the lovely sound of my nasally voice. So let's get into it. I have a 15-minute window on this thing. I don't know how long it will take me to go through this. But remember, it's 25 questions, Regents, multiple choice. It will be through Google Forms. I am going to put it up at 8 a.m. It will come down at 5 p.m. That is, what, a 9-hour window for you to take this thing. So that should accommodate everybody's schedules, although I would imagine that most of you have a lot of free time right now, so it shouldn't be an issue. I've been playing with different things for our class and, the best way to proceed. Remember, I'm not intending to give you guys, too much work or overbearing you or overburdening you, I should say. So, give me feedback and let me know what's going on out there. What are your other teachers doing? That sort of thing. It did come up about our June 2nd new U.S. History Regents this morning in the meeting, and we have no information from the state yet. I don't know if they can do Regents online. I don't know if the state is set up for that, nor do I think all the high schools in the state would be set up that way. So more information as I get it on that. So let's get into progressives. Remember, progressive means to make progress. And we are talking about societal progress in the face of wealth, wealth inequality that presented itself through the Gilded Age and for the decades in the, let's say, 1880s into about the 19 teens. World War I really pushes us out of the progressive age because when war is on, people aren't interested in, cleaning up factory life and city life and things like that. But during peacetime, reform-minded people especially, will start to look at societal ills and try to fix things because there's an enormous amount of wealth being built in the country, but it's being concentrated in the hands of the few. Now remember, the majority of the population is factory workers, mostly immigrant, but not all, and they're vulnerable. So they're working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, a lot of times in terrible conditions, and they are not really ever getting ahead and are kind of doubting the idea of America as this land of opportunity that we had always, that idea had always been out there, that you could come here, work hard, and become something. The reality of that was not exactly so because of industrialization. So the Rockefellers and the Morgans and the monopolies and the Millionaires Club and the Senate and all of that, that is going to be what the pushback is against moving forward in the progressive age. So you can see at the top of the review sheet, and you should open this up when you are listening to this audio cast. But who's free? What are the definitions of freedom? What standard of living should people willing to work hard have? What do you deserve if you are willing to work hard? Do you deserve a roof over your head and that's it? Do you deserve to go on vacation? Do you deserve to have opportunities for your kids? And America, the middle class is going to start to emerge out of this, unionization being one of the main catalysts of that. So we're really going to start to re-examine a lot of those things. Social class, what it means, and where is it headed? All right. Now, if business isn't going to help, and people are working hard already, then the only question or the only entity that can come in and actually do something is going to be the government. So that's what this is going to be about. Now, the federal government, of course, is always going to be the slowest to react. They represent the biggest, proportion of diversity and different people in different locations, rural versus urban, rich versus poor. So they're going to be the last to react. So if change is going to happen, it's often going to happen on the local and the state level first. And that really rings true to today as well. So let's talk about the muckrakers. The muckrakers are social reformers who want to change things. And the way they're going to change things is they're going to raise awareness. Now, the main media platform during the early 1900s is going to be print medium. So we're talking about newspapers, we're talking about periodicals, we're talking about journals, we're talking about magazines. All right. And these muckrakers are idealist types. They see a problem in society and they say that shouldn't be that. That shouldn't be so. Look at all the money that's here. This is a simple part of life that we should be able to do for these people without there being, too much poverty. So they're going to push government and they're going to raise awareness through their writings. Now, what you should know for the test in terms of the muckrakers is Upton Sinclair, who wrote The Jungle, which was about the Chicago slaughterhouses and the unsanitary food conditions, which led to the passing of the Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act. So, for the first time, the government is showing a willingness to step in and stop private business from potentially putting harmful products in the lives of ordinary citizens. Now, that may not sound very significant because we have that all the time today. We discussed, does the cigarette companies or the liquor companies want to put the Surgeon General warnings on the side of the pack or the side of the bottle? Absolutely not. Who makes them? Because it costs them money, right? It raises fear that their product is not safe. So who is going to make them do it? It's got to be the government. This is the first inkling of that sort of thing in America. So the idea of buyer beware and that it's your problem, you buy rancid meat and get sick, well, you should have known better. That way of thinking is going to start to be pushed aside, and the government is going to start to come in and say, no business, you can't do this, it's making people unsafe. Remember, the number one job of the federal government is to keep Americans safe. Second up is Jane Addams. She created the Hull House in Chicago, but then they're going to be moved around to all different cities throughout the country. She was a social reformer. If you remember in class, we talked about how she looked at conventional role for women with being a wife and having children as sort of being a shackled life and did not want that. So she wanted to do something different. And she's going to create like the idea of social service houses where people could go and help get job placement, help get lessons on how to speak English, how to where to live, who to live around, and who to live with. If they were sick, they might be able to get medical help. If they got hurt at work, they might be able to get a different kind of job. It was people helping people get a stronger foothold in society. Okay. Now, immigration, which is largely a continuation of our immigration discussion in the 1890s, which was the last unit. We've got millions flooding in. Southeastern Europeans, such as Italians, Polish, Jews, and Russians, are going to be more predominant over the northern Western Europeans. If you remember our discussion in class about the tall, blonder, bluer-eyed, paler-skinned European, less of those and more of the darker skin, darker hair, darker eye people are going to be coming here. They are not going to be looked at with any sort of admiration. They are exploited for their labor. They're desperate, they're vulnerable, and industrialists are going to prey on their desire to live, basically, by forcing them to work in terrible conditions. Where is most of this happening? In cities. So I think it makes sense that a lot of the cleanup of this stuff is going to take place in cities. So, what do they want? They want better working conditions. They want better pay. They want workman's compensation if they're hurt. They want unemployment benefits if they were to lose their jobs. And they need those things in order to be able to move up the social ladder and actually be rewarded for the work that they are doing. Okay? Now, at home, overcrowding, sanitation, indoor plumbing and electricity, those are things that the wealthy have that they don't. They look at themselves every day in the mirror and say, why am I working so hard to the bone when I don't have these basic comforts of life, and my increased risk of disease increased risk of lack of opportunity for their children. It starts to become an issue where people start to question why they are working in the first place if things are going to be so bad for them. So you think about Jacob Riis and the Tale of Two Cities and how the other half lives. On one side, you have, the few numbers living in millionaire mansions, while different fringe parts of town are full of poor people who are working in big hours. Now, scrolling down, let me do conservation and environmentalism first. I see that I have about 4.5 minutes left, so if I lose it, I will do another one on the political stuff. So Teddy Roosevelt is our first conservation or environmentally minded president. He was a hunter. He loved the outdoors. He did not take it for granted because he's asthmatic, and as a kid, he's indoors a lot. So once he finally breaks out, he really loves the outdoors. And he sees the building going on in the country, whether it be cities or railroads or just, population sprawl, whatever it might be. And he is worried that, deforestation and killing of all the buffalo in the middle of the country and things like that spells ruin for wildlife and for natural landscapes. So he is going to institute a national park system where there are going to be set aside lands, if you will, acres and acres and acres, that is going to be put aside for people to enjoy, such as what a park is. Okay? Let me start politics here, and I'll continue in another one of these. Now, the bull moose stuff is about Teddy Roosevelt. So Teddy Roosevelt is a vice president who becomes president because McKinley gets shot. He finishes McKinley's term and runs for another term. In 1908, he is going to basically hand select William Howard Taft as his successor, if you will. He doesn't really like Taft's politics during those 4 years, so he decides to come back out of retirement and run. He tries to run as a Republican, but Taft is in control, so he winds up creating a third party called the Bull Moose Party, which I shouldn't have to explain. And he winds up splitting the Republican vote and giving the election to Woodrow Wilson, who is the third progressive president and is actually a Democrat for the other party. So 3 progressive presidents, Roosevelt Republican, Taft Republican, Wilson is the Democrat. Now, we talked about Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act. He's going to pass the Addison Act, which is the 8-hour workday for railroad workers. Now, remember, we need an 8-hour workday in one industry before we can have it in other industries. So remember, the first time is always the hardest, and after that, it gets easier. More direct control over voting in the legislative process, primaries, initiative, referendum, and recall. Look back into your slides and read up on those. They will definitely be on the test. But the whole point of them is to give more power to the people, okay? Whether it be in voting for their leaders, in proposing legislation, in voting on legislation, or in recalling politicians or government officials, which would be removing them from office. Now, Teddy is going to be known as the trust buster. He puts teeth into the Interstate Commerce Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act, and the Clayton Antitrust Act. And what you need to know there is that they were pieces of legislation from the federal government to stop monopolies. No one ever really used them in the 1890s. Teddy's going to be the first one to do it. And he goes after J.P. Morgan and his Northern Securities Company first, and shows that they will shut down a major company if they think it's bad for the people. All right? Now, all of this represents bigger government. That's what the progressive age was, is bigger government, which in today's day and age, a lot of people think is a bad thing. I don't know if they're thinking that it's a bad thing right now. But yes, America was founded on the idea of limited government. The question isn't whether we need government, but how much government do we need? All right. Now, 16th Amendment, the graduated income tax. Remember, 16th and 17th Amendments are the ideas of the populace, third party, never won a major election, but it got absorbed into the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. So 16th Amendment is going to be graduated income tax. The more you make, the more you pay. That takes more money out of the hands of the wealthy and allows the federal government to use more of that money on the people. The 17th Amendment, which is a direct election of senators, Again, a populist idea, more hands directly in the hands of the voters. Now, instead of my state government deciding who it would be, it's going to be the people.